All right, hello everybody, my name is Mike Sabelski. Glad to be here at the Baltimore JavaScript User Group. I'm going to talk about remote control browsers with JavaScript. Specifically, I'm going to be talking about using the PhantomJS headless browser with CasperJS on top of it. So a little bit of background. I started this company this year, AdStack. It's an ad technology company, and we have to get data from a lot of different APIs. And actually, well, a lot of different websites, and not all of them are very friendly to this type of operation. They don't have APIs. We have to scrape the data. I used to be a lot more heavily into JavaScript. I gave a talk here a few years ago at this group about Sprout Core. Okay, so I did do Sprout Core. That was a crazy rich internet application world. Now I'm doing AdStack. And the first time I really put my toe into web scraping was with a Ruby gem called Mechanize. And I had this project where I wanted to scrape a Baltimore City database. I wanted to find out all the lists of vacant properties I wanted to find out what the city knew about the vacant properties and where were they. And they have all this data, but you can only get it like one page at a time through their website. You'd have to know the address ahead of time that you were interested in. You'd have to actually know the property ID of it to get a list. Anyway, it turns out this page was programmatically generated. It was an ASP page, and it actually wasn't that hard to reverse engineer the process. Basically, go to this URL, just follow some simple rules to loop through the page and scrape. And okay, if I see this here, it's been a while since I looked at this code. I just wanted to give you a flavor of it should be this easy to do. A site that's got semantic HTML that uses a lot of CSS selectors. It's very easy to scrape, and there's tons of tools like Mechanize that can do it for you. There's professional tools where you can spend thousands of dollars to make this super automated, to do this at a big scale. But this worked well for the Baltimore City property database. Okay, so I was chugging along working on AdStack, and I came across this one site that I don't want to name publicly, but you can ask me later, that it looked like it was built in 2005. It used completely all dynamic JavaScript for everything. There was hardly any CSS selectors on the whole page. There's very little. The DOM was populated with very few objects that I could even target for scraping. A lot of it was created on the fly with JavaScript. Just tons and tons of JavaScript. It's kind of slow. And it was really bugging me because for a long time I was trying to make this work. I was just trying to really figure out how these URLs are being dynamically generated. It totally didn't work. So I thought I was going to have to use Selenium. I'll show you an example. How many people have heard of Selenium before? Okay. This is a Ruby driver for Selenium. Well, let me boost the size of it. Looks like Evernote doesn't support the standard Mac stuff. Oh, wait a minute. Here's what we'll do. I'll just increase the font size that way. All right. What Selenium gives you is a browser. It gives you remote control of a real browser. Like if you were to run this, I don't have all the dependencies set up properly here on this machine, but if you were to run this, it actually would start up Chrome, and you would see the mouse clicking on different buttons and following these actions. As you can see here, this is my first solution to the problem, was to try and get the data through Selenium. So I'm finding an element, I'm actually typing in a username and password, going to another, look at all the stuff I'm having to do just to fill out a form and submit it. It's kind of intense. I'm having to do all these steps to get the dynamic stuff to happen the way I want. Okay, so the problem is, I run all this stuff on Heroku, and I want to run it wherever I run it. I don't want to have to install Chrome. I don't want to have a GUI just to do web scraping. I did find this Ruby gem called headlessly, which lets you run Selenium inside of XVFB, which sort of simulates X windows. I just could never get it to work, but in theory, because I wrapped this thing in headlessly, I shouldn't have had to have a full GUI. All I would need was XVFB. But that never really worked for me. And this Ruby driver is pretty nice, but I didn't find it a super intuitive way to write my scraper. Okay, so tried Mechanize, tried Selenium. Then I tried to use something called Qt WebKit. How many people have heard of Qt WebKit? All right. Well, it's a Qt port of WebKit, and that purports to be a headless browser, truly built from scratch to be a headless browser where it's designed to be run on servers that don't have a GUI. But I couldn't get that to build either. And meanwhile, like I'm trying to get this startup going, a million other features I'm trying to add. I was really starting to despair. So that is when I discovered this awesome tool called PhantomJS, which I'm here to talk about today. Let's see. So here's the great things about PhantomJS. It's a headless browser. It has no dependencies. So if you follow my directions on the GitHub site, like you've seen, you can install it in probably like 1 or 2 commands. With with OS X, it's just like brew install PhantomJS. I already have it, so it should just pop up. I mean, that's it. It works. Let's see. So they give you these are the main things people are using it for: website testing, scraping, rendering, and network monitoring. And I'll touch on pretty much all of these. So let me actually show you what PhantomJS code looks like. Phantom code, it's JavaScript, and it's completely asynchronous because you don't know when a page is going to finish loading. So this is essentially what you're doing here is setting up functions, and here we're injecting a script tag basically to go to this GeoIP site and then firing this is like a JSON P call basically, so that when we visit that site, this code gets executed and the result gets dumped to the page. So here's what it might make more sense if I actually run the command here. Yes. Inside of that, inside of the GitHub directory, CasperJS exercises, there's examples and there's also solutions to some of the exercises. So this is the one I just was showing you. So it's hitting that website, trying to get my IP address, figure out what my location is. Let's pray to the demo gods. Yeah, all right, there you go. So obviously we must be terminating our internet service here in Virginia. So that's kind of the basics of it. This works great, but that asynchronous style gets really complicated really fast. You're going to see in the exercises, actually I'll just go ahead and show them right now. Is that it? No, that's Casper. So this is a more complicated example that's from the PhantomJS examples of finding out how many Twitter followers you have. And you're starting to have to, like the callback thing gets to be a drag. So I really quickly abandoned using purely PhantomJS because it just wasn't, I was just getting lost in the details because it ended up being like 6 steps I had to jump through to this website. Okay, so my evolution moved on to this thing called CasperJS. And CasperJS is written for people like me that loved PhantomJS but were getting bogged down with their code. So it lets you program, and it builds itself as the navigation and scripting and testing utility for PhantomJS, written all in JavaScript. So it just gives you all this nicer layer of abstraction. So let's actually, I'll show you an example of what that code looks like. This is from the quick start. This is a Casper script that just scrapes all the pages from a Google result. So you can see here, this is mostly what you're doing is you're calling Casper steps, and you give each step like some kind of a configuration parameter, and then you give it a function to call when that step finishes. So you can keep building up step by step with these then statements, and then nothing happens until you actually do run at the end. So let's actually try it. Change my window here. So we'll let that fire. We'll pray to the demo gods. While that's running, okay, there you go. So those are all the links that happen when you, I guess, whatever was I was Googling for CasperJS. That's the links you get back. And I found this just to be a real joy to work with. The documentation is really good. You get all these nice, like besides the then, there's steps to cover all the common cases. The documentation's over here on the side. Anyway, it's not working at this browser size. Anyway, the exercises will help you examine what's so awesome about it. All right, so let me show you, this is like a non-trivial example using Casper. This is what I actually ended up coming out with. I wrote a standalone JavaScript file that accepts parameters from the system, so you can get an account name, username, password, and because of the way I had this running on Heroku, you had to give a path to where CasperJS is located. But anyway, so this is all the boring setup stuff. Here's where it actually happens. We start to build a URI. Let's see. Instantiating Casper. The way you do have to write some callbacks for error handling. But again, that's all. This is all boilerplate stuff. All right, here's what actually happens. We start out by fetching a URI for the login, and we fill in a login form with these parameters. You remember that was like 4 or 5 lines with Selenium. Here, you just do it all with Casper. And if you have a step where all you want to do is wait for the previous page to succeed, and then you open a new URL, you just use a then open. So I don't care what the result of all this is. I just want to log in. I guess I never bothered to check whether I have a problem or not. I guess if it does error out, then Casper will just quit. So I get another step where you still are dealing with the browser, so you have to. It's very particular about how you get information into and out of the actual browser instance. So if you want to run some code as if you were inside the browser itself instead of just driving the browser from the outside, you need to use this evaluation function. So this is actually something that is running inside the separate browser instance. It's not in my code. So if I want something, I have to pass everything as parameters here, and I have to return everything here. In other words, nothing inside this block here. It's a completely different scope than the block where this is running, if that makes sense. You'll see in the examples how to construct it. Oh, right, here's an example. So I'm getting the URL back. This utils thing is a nice little library that Casper injects into your page as it's loading, so it gives you helpers like get element by XPath. All right. So let's see. This is something that Ilya Grigoric tweeted today that I think is a really cool, more advanced example of using Phantom for continuous integration. I know someone else is talking about Jasmine later. So this guy hooked up PhantomJS with YSlow so that every time their continuous integration suite runs, they do performance testing inside their continuous integration suite with YSlow. How many people have used YSlow before or know what it is? Yeah. So, this just came out today, so I haven't played with this myself, but let's see, I'll give an example here. So if you are interested in doing that kind of stuff, this is pretty awesome. You could also, I imagine, hook this up with JSLint, although Nick will probably tell you better ways of doing that. I still think there's a place for Selenium, but now, given that this exists, I would only use Selenium if you actually wanted to test how your site behaves in different browsers. Like if you want to know that your stuff works in Internet Explorer and Chrome and Firefox or whatever else there's a Selenium driver for, you should definitely do that. But if you're just trying to get some data or do some basic smoke, or just trying to make sure the site is up and working, this is what I would do. And so one of the exercises I've given you is how to create a site test. Question? Can you set the user agent string that's passing through? I'm not sure, but all the tools that I've used let you do that because there are some sites that block. Well, that's probably what you're asking, because you know, like it's. I'm gonna find out. Casper exposes Phantom settings. I'd be shocked if there isn't a Phantom setting to do that. They don't hide any of the power of Phantom. All right. So now I actually want you guys to start playing with this stuff. So if you go to my GitHub account, I made a little exercise file, and this runs you through the hello world for Phantom and Casper. And first, I start you off by fixing or just updating some of the code, the examples, and then we're going to rewrite follow to run with Casper. I don't know how far we'll get through all these, but I'll just be walking around helping. There's answers for exercise 2 and 3 inside the JS directory, and then I had some intriguing things you could do to master Casper and Phantom. Although the one thing I wanted to mention, I'm a Ruby person. The reason I originally found out about Phantom was this project called Poltergeist, which lets you write Ruby code for Capybara to drive PhantomJS. So what's exciting to this for Ruby people is like you could write this one set of acceptance tests and exercise your app either in Selenium, WebKit, PhantomJS, or just using like the more primitive style like with Mechanize. That's pretty cool. So if you're into that, definitely check it out. Okay, any questions before we dive into the exercises? All right, let's get to it. Thanks, guys.